Chapter 2998. I don't expect to find those two guys anymore. Maybe they have already left Emerald Island. Deng Liang waved his hand. He was extremely depressed. He hadn't rested for many days. He was tired and desperate. He couldn't believe that he would fall to such a state in the end. Deng Liang, if we continue to stay here we will only die. Why don't the two of us escape? If we can escape we might have a chance to live. Kang Wei's eyes lit up as he suggested. Hearing this, Deng Liang's eyes also lit up, but it was quickly extinguished. With just the two of us, it will be difficult to escape. Once we are caught, we will be traitors. It won't be easy even if we want to die. Kang Wei seemed to have thought of the final fate of traitors. He couldn't help but shiver and shrink his neck. Instead of being tortured like that, it would be better to commit suicide. In that case we have no other way. We can only try our best to find those two guys. Kang Wei said. Deng Liang nodded. Let's hurry up and find them. If we find them we can still atone for our crimes. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked in the dark. The members of the heaven-shaking faction were very obvious. It was because of their usual arrogant style that they were wearing the same clothes. At a glance, Bailey Hongzhuang and Kang Wei could see many members of the heaven-shaking faction. However, most of these members were gathered in a group. They seemed to be searching, but in fact they were chatting and having fun. They didn't pay attention to the search. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. With so many people gathered together, it was not convenient for them to make a move. They could only continue to look for small targets. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang and Kang Wei suddenly found two different members of the heaven-shaking faction. Compared to the other members who were relaxed and careless, these two members were desperately looking for traces of the murderer. They looked as if they couldn't wait to dig 3 feet into the ground to find the murderer. Di Beichen looked around. These two members of the heaven-shaking faction were far away from the others, and there was no one nearby. They were excellent candidates. These two fellows will do. If we make a move here we won't be noticed by others. It's very convenient. Di Beichen's eyes flashed with a deep blue light. Their plan to deal with the heaven-shaking faction would start with these two people. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and a smile appeared on her face. I've finally found 2 easy targets. In the next second, the powder in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand slowly drifted down with a faint fragrance, like a flower blooming in the night. Neither of them was as strong as the other, so they could only use this method to knock the other out. Deng Liang and Kang Wei were trying their best to find traces of Bailey Hongzhuang when they suddenly smelled a charming fragrance. They couldn't help but take a deep breath. They didn't have time to rest these days. Their bodies were already stinking. Now that they smelled this fragrance they felt a lot more comfortable. I don't know where this fragrance is coming from. It smells really good. Kang Wei narrowed his eyes. Smelling this fragrance he really wanted to relax. Chapter 2999. When Kang Wei saw the faces of these two figures, he couldn't help but be stunned. He then rubbed his eyes, thinking that he was seeing things. But soon he realized that he wasn't seeing things and his whole body became excited. Deng Liang, it's these two guys. We found them. Deng Liang's expression wasn't much better than Kang Wei's. They had been searching for so long that they were almost in despair. They didn't expect that these two figures would appear in front of them like this. This was like a dying man finally finding a life-saving straw, and his whole body was excited to the extreme. Haha, it's really these two guys. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen saw the two guys in front of them, they also felt a little helpless. Could this be considered as enemies meeting on a narrow road? Previously they only noticed that these two guys were alone on the eaves, but they didn't see their true appearance. Now that they looked at them, they recognized that these were the guys who forced them to eat the truth pill in the square before. If it weren't for these two guys they wouldn't have been chased everywhere. However, it was a blessing in disguise. Although they had experienced a lot of danger, now it gave them a chance to take revenge on the heaven-shaking faction. It could only be said that it was a coincidence. However, they didn't expect that it would be so coincidental that the two targets they found just happened to be these two guys. That's great. We finally found the two of you. Deng Liang's face was full of smiles. As long as we capture the two of you, we can atone for our crimes, haha. Deng Liang's face instantly turned red. Previously they felt as if they had fallen into hell, but now that they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, they felt as if they had risen to heaven. The heavens would never bar one's way. The heavens still didn't intend to take their lives, so they gave them such a good opportunity. I told you that the two of us wouldn't be so unlucky. We will definitely be blessed with good fortune, ha. Kang Wei couldn't hide the excitement on his face. He even felt that as long as he brought these two guys back, Not only would he be able to atone for his crimes, he might even get some rewards. One must know that in these few days they had been ridiculed by everyone. Now they could finally hold their heads high. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. In their hearts, they could roughly guess that these two guys had been having a hard time in the Jintian faction recently. At this moment they had only seen them and had not yet figured out what the situation was, but they were already so excited. This was a bit too ridiculous. I say you two can stop dreaming, Bailey Hongzhuang said. Deng Liang and Kang Wei laughed. Liang, last time you escaped from our hands, this time, you won't have the chance to leave this place. Looking at the excited Deng Liang in front of him, Di Beichen's eyes showed a touch of sympathy. Today it is not the two of us who want to escape, but the two of you have no chance to leave. As soon as these words came out, Deng Liang and Kang Wei couldn't help but be stunned. They didn't understand what Di Beichen meant. The next moment, Kang Wei couldn't help but touch his head and said, why do I feel a little dizzy? Chapter 3000. Bang, bang. The sound of two people falling to the ground rang out as Deng Liang and Kang Wei fell to the ground one after another. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen didn't plan to fight with the other party. They only appeared in front of Deng Liang and Kang Wei after knowing that the other party had no chance of fighting with them after being drugged. However, Deng Liang and Kang Wei didn't even realize that they had been drugged. Perhaps it was because they had suffered too much recently that they didn't even realize that they had been drugged. Speaking of which, these two guys are really unlucky. Xiao Hei sat on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder and looked at the two guys who had fallen unconscious on the ground. She couldn't help but shake her head and felt that it was a little funny. They must have had a hard time in the Jintian faction these days. The others have already given up on searching and started playing around. Only the two of them are still desperately searching. Xiao Bai nodded. Isn't that great? We can finally be free. Xiao Hei raised her eyebrows. Bailey Hongzhuang also looked at the two figures on the ground. It could only be said that this was an ill-fated relationship. Di Beichen, speaking of which, using the two of them to frame others might be more effective than using other cultivators. A bright light flashed through Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes. She seemed to have thought of something and the smile on her face widened a little. Hearing this, Di Beichen thought for a moment and nodded. You're right. Although these two guys have been very poor recently, there are still many people on Emerald Island who are paying attention to them. If they were found to have pills that could control people's minds, then the Jintian faction would really have no way to defend themselves. Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai looked at each other and couldn't help but sympathize with these two guys. Speaking of which, these two guys were really too loyal to their duties. They had to ask so many detailed questions and in the end, they were even branded as traitors of the Jintian faction. This was really a little funny. Di Beichen looked at the sky and said, It's getting late. Gang leader Yi and the others should have had enough. Let's go. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Let's go. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang put Deng Liang and Kang Wei into her chaos ring. Then she set off with Di Beichen to the place where Yi Lifei and the others were having their meal. Inside the room. Gang leader Liang, you have to drink more. We haven't gotten together in a long time. Yi Lifei helped Liang Qinghui fill up his cup. Liang Qinghui's face was already red, and his slightly narrowed eyes revealed his drunkenness. Gang leader Yi, you're too polite. Out of all the gangs, you're the one I admire the most. Gang leader Liang is young and promising. I'm already old. I'm no longer competitive. Yi Lifei shook his head and sighed. Liang Qinghui's expression turned serious. Gang leader Yi, you're belittling yourself. On Emerald Island, your Cyan Great Gang is the #1 faction. Who dares to disagree with that? However, the Jintian faction's recent actions have been a little too arrogant. Emerald Island isn't even within their sphere of influence. They just had to use the excuse of searching for the murderer to set up camp here. I really can't stand it anymore. Gang leader Yi, Gao Hanchuan's actions are challenging the dignity of your Cyan Great Gang. Chapter 3001. If it was my brother who was killed, I definitely wouldn't let the opponent go. Now that Gao Hanchun has explained the reason, if I still refuse, it would be too unreasonable. Yi Lifei slowly said. Gang leader Yi, you are too loyal. In my opinion, Gao Hanchun knows your temperament, so he deliberately made up such a reason. The Heaven-Shaking faction has existed on Penglai Island for a long time, but I have never heard of Gao Hanchun having any brothers. All of this is fake. I feel that the Heaven-Shaking faction's rapid development is really strange. Maybe the rumor is true, they used a pill to control people's hearts to forcibly develop. Otherwise, how could they recruit so many gang members in such a short period of time? Liang Qinghui's face was full of disbelief. He had established the Cloud Sun Gang for a long time as the gang leader. He knew very well that it was not an easy thing to develop a gang's strength. The heaven-shaking faction's development in the past 2 years was really too enviable. He believed that there must be some reason behind it, otherwise it would not have developed to such a state. Yi Lifei looked at the slightly drunk Liang Qinghui in front of him, and secretly sneered. He already knew that Liang Qinghui was jealous and dissatisfied with the heaven-shaking faction. Today he wanted to borrow Liang Qinghui's hand to completely blow up the matter. This shouldn't be right? Yi Lifei lowered his voice, his face full of suspicion. This pill to control people's hearts is not so easy to get. What's more, this is just a rumor. There is no evidence at all. Gang leader Liang, you can't slander the heaven-shaking faction like this. Hearing Yi Lifei speak for the heaven-shaking faction, Liang Qinghui was even more unconvinced. If this kind of thing has no evidence, how can it be groundless? Not only me but now many gangs have the same suspicion. The heaven-shaking faction is becoming more and more arrogant. Their confidence must be related to this. Gang leader Yi, your Great Cyan Gang is the biggest force on Emerald Island. As long as you are willing to stand up, my Cloud Sun Gang and other forces will definitely support you. So what if the heaven-shaking faction is developing well? Emerald Island is not something they can touch as they wish. Looking at Liang Qinghui's agitated appearance, Yi Lifei comforted him. Gang leader Liang, don't be impatient. It's not that I don't know what you are thinking, but there is no evidence. We can't slander others, otherwise it will be our fault. In my opinion, let's forget about this matter for the time being. I still don't believe that the heaven-shaking faction would use such a despicable method. Seeing Yi Lifei's words, Liang Qinghui was somewhat anxious and hurriedly said, Gang leader Yi, what if we find evidence? As gang leader the heaven-shaking sects, then the harm our interests will naturally harm our interests as sects not. Tites as Isis. As right hearing Yi Lifei's words, Liang Qinghui immediately downed the wine in his cup and said heroically, I'm relieved to hear Faction Master Ye's words. Heaven's net has a long arm. I will definitely find the evidence of Jintian faction. Chapter 3002. At this moment, the sound of birds chirping came from outside the door. It didn't sound like much, but if one listened carefully, one would notice that there was a certain rhythm to the chirping. However, it was obvious that Liang Qinghui, who was drunk and thinking about how to find evidence of the Jintian faction, didn't notice this at all. After hearing the chirping of birds, Yi Lifei's eyes couldn't help but brighten. He turned to look at Liang Qinghui, who was almost drunk, and said, Faction leader Liang, it's getting late. Why don't we go back? Hearing this, Liang Qinghui nodded. Okay, I have to hurry up and find evidence of the Jintian faction. We can't let them continue to be so arrogant. Yi Lifei, Liang Qinghui, and their men walked out of the house together and slowly walked outside. However, just as they walked out of the house, they saw 4 figures not far away. 2 of them were carrying 2 unconscious guys. Although they didn't know what was going on, they knew at a glance that it was definitely not a good thing. What's going on? Liang Qinghui opened his eyes wide and looked ahead. However, he was slightly drunk and couldn't understand what was going on. Who is it? Yi Lifei shouted sternly. Hearing Yi Lifei's shout, the 2 people carrying the 2 guys couldn't help but panic. They looked back at Yi Lifei and the others and then looked at the 2 guys on their shoulders. They were completely flustered. Go and take a look. Yi Lifei hurriedly called his men. At this time, the people of the Yunyang faction also saw the appearance of the 2 people not far away. Suddenly, a look of surprise appeared on their faces. Aren't those 2 guys the people the Jintian faction has been looking for recently? That's right. It's the 2 of them. Everyone immediately became excited. Originally, even if the incident happened in the square that day, not everyone had seen the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and Liang Qinghui. However, the recent search by the Jintian faction was really too big. They even drew portraits of the 2 people and pasted them all over the Emerald Island. Therefore, everyone felt that the 2 faces were very familiar. With just a glance, they immediately recognized them. When the 2 of them realized that the other party had recognized them, they immediately abandoned the 2 fellows on their backs and quickly ran away. The cultivators of Great Cyan Gang and Cloud Sun Gang quickly chased after them. Liang Qinghui, who was originally drunk to the point of not being very clear-headed, instantly sobered up after knowing that the 2 people in front of him were the people the heaven-shaking gang was looking for. We must catch those 2 guys. Yi Lifei was also a little startled after seeing this scene. He had heard some of Bailey Hongzhuang's plan before, but he didn't expect that the 2 people in front of him weren't Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. but were the two people the heaven-shaking faction was looking for, which surprised him greatly. After leaving the two behind, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen turned a corner and entered the Chaos Ring. When the cultivators from the Great Cyan Gang and the Cloud Sun Gang caught up to them, they realized that the entire alley was empty. There was no trace of the two at all. The speed of these two guys is really fast. They disappeared in the blink of an eye. They were clearly not far in front of us just now. How come we can't see them in such a short time? Chapter 3003. When the cultivators of Great Cyan Gang and Yunyang Gang returned, Liang Qinghui immediately went up to them and asked, "Did you catch them?" Hearing Liang Qinghui's words, a look of guilt flashed across the faces of the cultivators. "Sect Master, the other party's speed is simply too fast. We've already chased after them as fast as we can, but they still managed to escape." Liang Qinghui couldn't help but frown. "Damn it! If we catch those two guys, we'll be able to know the truth." Yi Lifei's face also became gloomy. Those two should be newcomers to Penglai Island. With so many of you working together, you still can't catch them? Reporting to gang leader, those two guys ran away like a wisp of smoke. I think that's why the heaven-shaking faction hasn't been able to catch them. Yi Lifei nodded. That's true. If those two guys were really so easy to catch, the heaven-shaking faction would have caught them long ago. They wouldn't have waited until now. As Yi Lifei's voice fell, Liang Qinghui's face looked better, but the annoyance in his heart still couldn't dissipate. He had previously said that he must find evidence of the heaven-shaking faction. Now that the evidence had appeared in front of him, he didn't grasp such a good opportunity. One could imagine the unhappiness in his heart. "Let's go and see who those two people are," Yi Lifei said. Liang Qinghui and the others immediately walked up. They were really curious about who those two guys who had been hiding from the pursuit were carrying. Logically speaking, in this situation they should be hiding and shouldn't come out again. Once they were caught by the heaven-shaking faction, they would be finished. When everyone walked up to the two people, Yi Lifei was able to determine their identities through their clothes. These two people are wearing the clothes of the heaven-shaking faction. They should be from the heaven-shaking faction. Could it be that those two guys are being chased by the heaven-shaking faction and want to take revenge on them? Yi Lifei lowered his voice and spoke slowly, revealing a trace of surprise and astonishment. If that's really the case, then these two people are really audacious. However, when Liang Qinghui saw the faces clearly, he could not help but widen his eyes and ask in shock, "Aren't these two fellas the ones who made people consume true nature pills that day?" "That's right. Master, it's these two guys." The cultivators of the Yunyang Gang answered one after another. Yi Lifei raised his eyebrows and looked at Liang Qinghui in confusion. "What do you mean?" Seeing Yi Lifei's confusion, Liang Qinghui couldn't help but explain, "Gang Master Yi, there's something you don't know. These two are the heaven-shaking faction cultivators who forced the two disciples to take true chi pills a few days ago in the square. The reason heaven-shaking faction used the mind-controlling pill was also because of them. I've always suspected that the pill the two of them forced the newcomers to take that day was not a truth pill at all, but a pill used to control people's hearts. However, the heaven-shaking faction has always denied it, so we don't have any evidence." "I see." Yi Lifei nodded and suddenly understood. "So, those two fellows are indeed here to seek revenge on these two people?" Chapter 3004. Hearing Liang Qinghui's words, Yi Lifei's face also showed a touch of agreement. After this period of time, he was more and more optimistic about Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Any cultivator who came to Penglai Island had some ability, but because this place was a gathering of heroes, his vision had also become a lot higher. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's performance was definitely outstanding among all the newcomers. He was sure that as long as they wandered around Penglai Island for a period of time, their future achievements would definitely be incomparable to ordinary people. If it wasn't for the Jintian faction causing trouble for them, their journey to Penglai Island would have been much smoother. If there's a chance, it would be good to recruit these two people to our Yunyang faction. After drinking, Liang Qinghui spoke without the usual scruples. He had been unhappy with the Jintian faction for a long time. If there was a chance to make them unhappy, he naturally wouldn't refuse. When that time comes, not only would he let these two fellows join his Yunyang faction, he would also give them a good position. It would be best if they could make Gao Hanchun and the others jump in anger. Yi Lifei laughed and shook his head. "If they really join the Yunyang faction, then you will be facing real trouble. Gao Hanchun and the others will definitely go and ask for them. Moreover, with their status and ability, how could they possibly join the Yunyang faction? Liang Qinghui naturally knew that this idea of his was very difficult to achieve because their Yunyang faction was not as powerful as the Zhentian faction. If the Zhentian faction really came to ask for them, they probably couldn't refuse. After all, once they fought, they would inevitably be at a disadvantage. It was precisely because of this that he felt even more sullen in his heart. Since we have found these two fellows, why don't we check what kind of elixir they have on them? Liang Qinghui's face was full of unwillingness. He didn't believe that the Zhentian faction would do things without leaving any evidence behind. Deng Liang and Kang Wei had already become dead pigs under the influence of the drug. In their sleep, they didn't know anything about the outside world. Liang Qinghui waved his hand, and the cultivators of the Yunyang faction immediately took the Qingquan bags from Deng Liang and Kang Wei. Soon they handed 2 white porcelain bottles to Liang Qinghui. Sect Master, look. Liang Qinghui took the 2 white porcelain bottles and saw that there was a small piece of paper on top of the commonly used white porcelain bottles. Impressively, the 3 words True Spirit Pill were written on it. After opening the white porcelain bottle, Liang Qinghui took a whiff and couldn't help but frown. Because the taste of this True Heart pill was clearly different from what he knew. The True Qi pill was a pill that was often used on Penglai Island. They were all very familiar with it. Logically speaking, if it really was a True Qi pill, Liang Qinghui would definitely be able to tell at first glance. However, the pill in this white porcelain bottle was clearly a little strange. Thinking of this, Liang Qinghui hurriedly handed the white porcelain bottle to Yi Lifei. His slightly red face was filled with a hint of seriousness. Gang leader Yi, there's something wrong with this True Qi pill. Hearing Liang Qinghui's words, Yi Lifei was also stunned for a moment. He took the white porcelain bottle and carefully smelled it, and his brows wrinkled. This pill fragrance seems to be different from the pill fragrance of the True Heart pill. Seeing that Yi Lifei's judgment was the same as his, Liang Qinghui immediately became spirited. I already said that there was a problem with the heaven-shaking faction's pills. Now Gang Master, you should believe me, right? Chapter 3005. Maybe they ran out of True Qi pills, so they took other pills along the way. How is that possible? Liang Qinghui frowned. He had already determined everything in his heart. If that's really the case, then it's a bit far-fetched for the two of them to be so consistent. Hearing this, Yi Lifei's expression also changed a bit, and he said in a deep voice, Clan leader Liang, we still don't know what kind of pill this is, so let's not make a judgment for the time being. Why don't we go find an alchemist first and let him judge what kind of effect this pill has, then we can make a plan. What do you think? Liang Qinghui also calmed down a bit. Meeting Yi Lifei's deep eyes, he nodded, all right. Clan leader Yi, this matter needs someone to testify. If I do it alone, I'm afraid it will arouse suspicion. Why don't we go find an alchemist together? This way, if the result is really as I think, you can also be a witness. Liang Qinghui's eyes flashed with excitement. He had waited for so long and finally had the chance to deal with the heaven-shaking faction. He absolutely could not make any mistakes in the process. Even though he did not know what kind of pill was in the white porcelain bottle, he had a strong premonition in his heart that this pill was probably a pill that could control people's hearts. Yi Lifei's expression changed slightly, his expression solemn and serious. All right. Before we know the result, we should not spread this matter out for the time being. Otherwise, if something goes wrong, the heaven-shaking faction will have something on you. Liang Qinghui cupped his hands. Then thank you, Clan leader Yi. We have been good friends for so many years, these things are what we should do. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen returned to the Green Great Gang after completing everything. Shengguan Yingying and Wen Ziren also heaved a sigh of relief when they saw the two of them return safely. Is everything done? Di Beichen nodded. We have done what we should do. Next, it will depend on Clan leader Ye's ability. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. Their plan was flawless, and she believed that there wouldn't be any problems. Liang Qinghui was also the witness they had specially found because Liang Qinghui and Gao Hanchun had always hated each other. If there was a chance to deal with Gao Hanchun, Liang Qinghui would definitely spare no effort. In this way, Yi Lifei had become a witness, and he had pushed all the blame away from the Qinghong gang. This was what it meant to kill with a borrowed knife. That gang leader Liang is an impulsive person to begin with. Now that he's drunk, I'm sure he'll fall for it. Let's just wait for the good news, Ziren said with a smile. The four of them looked at each other and smiled. The heaven-shaking faction would soon suffer the consequences of their actions. Yi Lifei and Liang Qinghui immediately went to find a trustworthy alchemist and gave the pill to the alchemist for verification. The alchemist's verification speed was very fast, and it didn't take long for him to verify the medicinal effects of this medicinal pill. However, after discovering the medicinal effects, the alchemist's face couldn't help but suddenly change. Seeing this scene, Liang Qinghui could not resist asking, "Is there a problem with this medicinal pill?" Chapter 3006. Control people? Yi Lifei raised his voice. The pharmacist nodded. Yes, this pill has the power to bewitch people, and it contains a substance that can make people addicted to it. It's impossible to leave it. Sect masters, where did these pills come from? The effect of this pill is no different from using poison to control people, but it's difficult to detect, making it even more difficult to escape. Although I've heard of pills with this effect, it's the first time I've seen one. As the pharmacist's voice fell, Yi Lifei's face was filled with shock. At this moment, it wasn't an act but a true shock. Previously, when Bailey Hongzhuang told him that she had such a dan, he was very surprised. But now, after the explanation of the alchemist, he knew that the effect of this dan was so powerful. When he thought that Bailey Hongzhuang even had such a dan, he felt more and more that Bailey Hongzhuang was terrible and powerful. As long as the effects of this pill were revealed, it would inevitably cause a great uproar. When that time came, heaven-shaking faction would have a hard time. Liang Qinghui's expression wasn't much better than Yi Lifei's, but compared to shock, he was more angry. Leader Yi, I've already said that heaven-shaking faction's growth in the past 2 years is too strange. They must have used some special method, but you didn't believe me. Now you should believe me, right? As long as they let people take this pill, they can only be controlled. Their methods are so despicable, how can we compare to them? No wonder they're so arrogant, I completely understand now. Yi Lifei's face was gloomy, and there was a hint of pain in his voice. I really didn't expect them to use such a despicable method. I don't know how many people they've used this method to control. We really can't tolerate this. Liang Qinghui nodded repeatedly. Heaven-shaking faction thought they'd done it flawlessly, hiding for so long without being discovered, but now death is at hand. Thinking of this, Liang Qinghui couldn't help but feel excited. He had endured for so long and finally had the chance to deal with the heaven-shaking faction. After hearing the conversation between Liang Qinghui and Yi Lifei, the alchemist was completely dumbfounded. He didn't expect that this pill would be related to the Shaking Heaven faction. At this moment, when he thought about the rumors, he didn't think that there was anything wrong with it. On the contrary, he almost subconsciously believed all of this. Gang leader Liang, let's notify the other factions tomorrow. I think we need to let everyone know about this. At the same time, we need to confirm it. Yi Lifei did not lose his composure because of his momentary shock. Instead, he thought about what to do next. Sect Master Yi, you are the sect master of our Emerald Island's leading force. Naturally, I will listen to your arrangements. That's good. None of us can spread the news today to avoid alerting the enemy. We'll make plans tomorrow. All right. It was already late at night, and almost everyone had already fallen asleep. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 had been waiting in the room. Suddenly, a familiar sound of footsteps came from outside the house. Xiren had already opened the door before the other person could knock. Chapter 3007. Young Master D, you guys are really amazing. The effect of this pill is really shocking. Yi Lifei's face was filled with joy. Ever since the heaven-shaking faction started to make trouble for him, he had been looking for a chance to fight back, but he never found the right opportunity. Now, he was almost certain that after tomorrow, the heaven-shaking faction's reputation would be greatly reduced, and he would become the target of all the forces. At that time, even if the heaven-shaking faction's strength was not weak, they would definitely be expelled from the Emerald Island. Not only that, he would also find a way to let everyone join forces to attack the heaven-shaking faction, and take advantage of this opportunity to wipe them out in one fell swoop. Looking at the smile on Yi Lifei's face, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others already knew that their judgment was right, and the plan was successful. Does gang leader Liang have any doubts? Di Beichen asked in a deep voice. No, Liang Qinghui believes everything that happened today and has no doubts about me at all. Tomorrow he will be the one to tell the other gang leaders about this matter, and I will only be a witness. Yi Lifei smiled faintly. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Gang leader Yi, this is only the first step to success. Next, we will need to use some methods to make the heaven-shaking faction be convicted. You must find someone trustworthy. If there are any more traitors, then this plan will be completely ruined. Second young Master D, don't worry, I will never let this happen a second time. Yi Lifei's eyes were fierce and resolute. He had experienced this kind of stupid decision once before, and if there was a second time, then he deserved to die. That's good. Bailey Hongzhuang trusted Yi Lifei very much. Being able to become a leader in a place like Penglai Island was enough to prove Yi Lifei's ability. He should have a better way to deal with these traitors. The next day, Yi Lifei and Liang Yonghui immediately notified the various forces of the Emerald Island. Their actions were very secretive, and they hid it from everyone in the Heaven-Shaking faction. Gang leader Yi, is what gang leader Liang said true? Did the Heaven-Shaking faction really use this kind of pill to recruit members? After hearing Liang Yonghui's words, everyone's faces were filled with shock. Yi Lifei nodded. This pill was indeed found on the bodies of the Heaven-Shaking faction's members. Gang leader Liang and I found it together and found an alchemist to appraise it. Everyone can take a look at this pill, but I can't rule out the possibility of framing someone else. In my opinion, the Xintian faction is definitely not doing this kind of thing for no reason. Their means are so despicable. Under the guise of looking for the murderer, they are recruiting members on our Emerald Island. This is simply contempt for all of us. This is absolutely intolerable. That's right. Originally, I quite admired Gao Hanchuan's ability, but I didn't expect that he had been using these crooked methods. We can't allow them to continue like this. We must make this matter public and expel those bastards from the Heaven-Shaking faction from the Emerald Island. The leaders couldn't help but express their stance. The recent actions of the Heaven-Shaking faction had already made them unable to tolerate it. In fact, they only needed a name to unite everyone. As for what the Heaven-Shaking faction was like, they didn't care. Chapter 3008. At this time, a faction leader stood out and voiced his opinion. Gao Hanchuan's Xintian faction was getting more and more powerful. If they couldn't produce solid evidence, Gao Hanchuan would definitely deny it. Once it was overturned, it would be very disadvantageous for them. If finding such elixirs on their disciples isn't solid evidence, then what should we do? Why don't we catch a few more Xintian faction members tonight and see if they still have such elixirs on them? A faction leader said, if we also find such elixirs on the other faction members, then no matter how Gao Hanchuan quibbles, it would be meaningless. As soon as he said that, everyone nodded. Let's be witnesses together. Yi Lifei's eyes quietly flashed with a faint light. There were several white porcelain bottles in his Qingkuan bag. These were all given to him by Bailey Hongzhuang, and all of them were elixirs that could control people's minds. If they wanted to turn this framing into irrefutable evidence, the only way they could do it was to frame him multiple times. The first discovery might be a coincidence, but if they were to be discovered every time, then it wouldn't be a coincidence. As for how to frame him, he had his own methods. At night, Yi Lifei and the other faction leaders gathered together. They wanted to take advantage of the night to verify everything. Each of them sent out a cultivator to capture the members of the Heaven-Shaking faction. After knocking them out, they would bring them back without anyone noticing. It's late, you guys should set off. Yi Lifei looked at the few cultivators who were prepared in front of him, and his gaze quietly landed on his trusted aide. This person used to be a thief, and his technique could be said to be amazing. It would be difficult for ordinary people to hide from others and put things into someone's Qingkuan bag. However, if it was him, it might not be so easy. Whether or not today's plan would succeed depended on him. That person nodded without batting an eyelid, promising to complete this mission. Just as Yi Lifei and the others were working together to verify everything, Gao Hanchuan and the others were completely unaware. I'm afraid that the two guys we're looking for have already left Emerald Island. After searching for so long, there's no news at all. Our brothers are gradually getting tired. Lu Jiangang's face showed a touch of helplessness. They had been searching here for nearly 10 days. Not to mention his brothers, even he felt that there was no hope. However, we've been developing well on Emerald Island with the help of this matter. Why don't we take advantage of this opportunity to set up a branch here? How's Yi Lifei recently? Gao Hanchuan asked with a calm expression. His body's condition seems to be getting worse, but he's still pretending like before. But he's powerless. Lu Jiangang replied. The most important thing is to familiarize ourselves with the terrain of Emerald Island. The 3-month period would soon be over. Instead of leaving now, they might as well stay here. Chapter 3009. Following Gue Jun's words, Gao Hanchuan couldn't help but squint his eyes and take a deep look at Gue Jun. Why do you think so? I'm sure Big Brother also has the same conjecture. Gue Jun looked indifferent. The entire Emerald Island is only so big. We have already searched all the places we can find, but we haven't found any trace of them. This is very strange in itself. I don't believe that these two newcomers can escape from under our noses, so the only place they can be is the places we haven't searched. Gao Hanchun picked up the teacup and took a sip of tea, but he didn't comment. Those two guys are just newcomers. Logically speaking, there is no need for any faction to help them. The only reason they help is because they are dissatisfied with our heaven-shaking faction. Gui Jun's eyes flashed with wisdom. Although he was usually very lecherous, it didn't mean that he was a good-for-nothing. On the contrary, his mind was very clear. But we have no way to search for other factions. Lu Jianggang frowned. After Gui Jun's reminder, he felt that Gui Jun's words were very reasonable. Gui Jun, which force do you think will take them in? Gao Hanchun asked without batting an eyelid. Gui Jun hesitated for a moment, then said, Great Saiyan faction. Gao Hanchun's eyes suddenly became sharp. Yi Lifei can't even take care of himself now. Is he really in the mood to do such a thing? It's precisely because Yi Lifei's condition is getting worse and worse that our insatiable greed makes him even more unhappy. Perhaps he's doing this because he wants us to be ostracized by other forces. No matter what, this isn't a good thing for us, Gui Jun continued. Gao Hanchun slammed the teacup on the table. That old guy, even if he is about to die, he still can't forget to make trouble for us. Lu Jianggang looked at Gao Hanchun and Gui Jun in a daze. It seemed that at this moment, they had already determined the ins and outs of the whole matter. Second brother, go and find those two fellows from our gang, Gao Hanchun said. Lu Jianggang quickly nodded, okay. After a long while, Lu Jianggang came back with a gloomy face. Big brother, I asked the brothers in the faction. They haven't seen those two guys since yesterday. Where did they go? Can't you find it? These two fellows have made a big mistake. Recently, they have been ostracized by everyone, so they have always been together. I don't care too much about it. Now, I don't know where they have run off to. Lu Jianggang frowned. Could they have run away? Gui Jun shook his head. Right now, the entire Emerald Island is under our control. They don't have the ability to escape. Second brother, send someone to search again. Gao Hanchun's eyes were sinister and complicated, making it hard for others to guess his thoughts. Vaguely, he had a bad premonition today. This was his intuition. Although there was no reason for it, it had helped him a lot in the past. I'll give the order right away. At this moment, Yi Lifei and the other gang leaders were looking at the captured heaven-shaking faction members in front of them. They had captured a total of 5 people. After a round of searching, they found the same pill on 3 of them. The evidence was irrefutable. Chapter 30:10. Now, Jintian faction has no way to quibble. Liang Yonghui's face was full of anger. Although not every cultivator had it, 3 out of 5 people had it. What else was there to explain? This proved that it was a publicly acknowledged secret in the entire Jintian faction. Faction leader Yi, now that things have come to this, we can't continue to sit and wait for death. The reason that Jintian faction has been using is just a pretense to recruit members. With this name, they can almost recruit all the newcomers to Emerald Island to Jintian faction. I was wondering why Jintian faction was so interested in newcomers recently. Many newcomers have just arrived at Penglai Island and don't know anything about this place. Plus, they don't have any background. They can take advantage of this loophole. Not only that, our Emerald Island is the closest island to the outside world. Almost all the cultivators will come here. That's why Jintian faction is so envious of our Emerald Island. In a short period of time, everyone had already connected all the dots. They felt that Jintian faction was really ambitious. They had been deceived for so long. If it wasn't for this coincidental discovery, they really didn't know when they would have known all this. If Gao Hanchun were here to hear all of this, he would probably be completely dumbfounded. He clearly wasn't that complicated. These guys had completely helped him fabricate a brand new version. Moreover, this series of events was extremely logical. Even he couldn't help but believe it when he heard it. Let's go tell the world now. Our Qinghong faction will not tolerate this kind of thing. Yi Lifei said righteously. We will not tolerate it either. Everyone voiced their agreement. As the largest local force on Emerald Island, the Great Saiyan Gang's rallying power was not small to begin with. Previously, Yi Lifei was also unwilling to pay attention to this matter because of his deteriorating physical condition. Now that he had a chance to continue living and knew that the reason his body became like this was all because of Gao Hanchun, he naturally spared no effort in dealing with Gao Hanchun. Yunyang faction and the other faction leaders agreed. Emerald Island was only a small piece of land. They had been around for many years and were absolutely unwilling to let Jintian faction join them. With the Great Cyan Gang and the other major forces spreading the news of the Jintian Gang using despicable methods to recruit members spread throughout the Emerald Island in a short period of time. Once the news spread, all the cultivators on Emerald Island were shocked. Previously, everyone had their suspicions, but now that all the major forces had come forward to prove this rumor, the evidence was irrefutable. I already guessed that the rumor was true. The heaven-shaking faction is getting more and more arrogant. The Great Cyan Gang and the other major powers have all stood out. I'm afraid that the heaven-shaking gang won't be able to stay on the Emerald Island any longer. The further they scram, the better. Recently, the entire Emerald Island has been in chaos because of them. I think they are already very unhappy. All of a sudden, all the cultivators on Emerald Island despised the heaven-shaking faction. All kinds of denunciations erupted. This also proved that the heaven-shaking faction's actions during this period of time were really infuriating. Chapter 30:11. After Gao Hanchun discovered that several of his subordinates had disappeared one after another, the ominous premonition in his heart grew stronger. It was impossible for his subordinates to disappear on their own. Moreover, 7 of them had disappeared in one go. It could only be said that someone had begun to make a move against the Jintian faction. After discovering this, Gao Hanchun immediately gathered the members of the Jintian faction. He could not let everyone continue to be scattered like this. Otherwise, if they were to be killed one by one, it would be really troublesome. Damn it! Haven't we been safe for so many days? Who on earth has suddenly made a move against our Jintian faction? Lu Jiangang's face was filled with unspeakable anger. Ever since their Jintian faction had become stronger and stronger, it had been a long time since anyone dared to do such a thing to them. Hearing Lu Jiangang's words, Gui Jun lazily glanced at him and said, "In the entire Emerald Island, other than the Qinghong faction, no one else would have such courage." The Qinghong faction was the largest faction on the Emerald Island. Although the other factions usually competed with the Qinghong faction, after they arrived, the other factions had always hoped that the Qinghong faction would stand up. However, Yi Lifei had never expressed his stance. He believed that if it were any other faction, they would not have the courage to compete with the Jintian faction. Therefore, there was only one possibility, the Qinghong faction. A storm was brewing in Gao Hanchuan's eyes. His dignified face was filled with gloom at this moment. Yi Lifei, what a good one. He's about to lose his life, yet he still has the mind to deal with us. Big brother, what should we do now? Lu Jiangang asked. Gao Hanchuan's eyes turned sharp. Since Yi Lifei wants to cause trouble for us behind our backs, then we'll directly bring this trouble to the surface. I don't believe that old fox can continue to act in front of me. As soon as these words were spoken, the eyes of Lu Jiangang and the others brightened. They were also very dissatisfied with the existence of the Qinghong faction. Now that they had the opportunity to face them head-on, they were also very much looking forward to it. However, just as Gao Hanchun and the others were preparing to aggressively head towards the Qinghong faction, the news brought by a faction member stunned Gao Hanchun and the others. What did you say? The Great Cyan Gang and the other big gangs are saying that we're using pills to control people's hearts to recruit gang members? Lu Jiangang raised his voice, unable to hide the astonishment on his face. The news has already spread throughout the entire Emerald Island. Everyone is talking about it. Our gang members are being ostracized and suppressed. They will be cursed and scolded as soon as they go out. Gui Jun, who had been acting very indifferent all this while, could not help but stand up at this moment. Thick anger surfaced on his face. What a joke. It's too much to splash such dirty water on us. This had always been the problem that they were most worried about. They wanted to find those 2 guys to wash away all of this. Fortunately, although there had always been rumors, no one could be sure. However, now that all the major gangs had come out together to put this name on their heads, the situation was completely different. Go. Let's go to Qinghong Gang. The expression on Gao Hanchuan's face did not change. However, the arc on the corners of his mouth became increasingly cold. Faintly, a murderous aura was emitted. Chapter 30:12. After Yi Lifei and the other leaders spread the news, they didn't leave. Instead, they quietly sipped their tea. They knew very well that once the heaven-shaking faction got hold of this news, Gao Hanchun and the others would definitely come knocking on their door. Rather than regrouping, they might as well wait here for them to come. Gao Hanchun had been in a bad mood the entire way. He knew very well how much the rumors spread by the Great Cyan Gang would affect their heaven-shaking faction. If they couldn't get the Great Cyan Gang to stand up and deny this rumor, then their heaven-shaking faction would become like a rat on the street, hated by everyone. No one would accept the existence of such a gang. This meant that they would not have any reinforcements. The heaven-shaking faction had offended many forces along the way. With such a reputation, once these forces joined forces, the heaven-shaking faction would be in an extremely difficult situation. It was a matter of life and death. Gao Hanquan's chest heaved up and down due to his anger. The thought of killing Yi Lifei and swallowing the Great Saiyan gang kept circling in his mind. He felt that he should have made his move earlier so that there wouldn't be so much trouble. Big brother, could it be that Yi Lifei discovered that we poisoned him, so before he dies he wants to take us down? Gui Jun's eyes flashed with a thoughtful light. He had been thinking about why Yi Lifei's attitude had changed so much. There must be some reason that they did not know about. Hearing this, Gao Hanquan narrowed his eyes. A complicated light flashed across his eyes. I haven't heard about this recently. Are the cultivators from the 100 Flowers Gate still in the Great Saiyan gang? They are still here. They are temporarily staying in the Great Saiyan gang. According to the news I received, Yi Lifei treats them very well. Lu Jinggang replied. That means, it's not impossible. Gao Hanquan seemed to have suddenly understood something. His original anger subsided a little and he became calmer. Our method of poisoning was extremely covert. Logically speaking, it should be impossible for the other party to discover it. Could it be that these two disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate have such superb medical skills? Everything is possible. Let's go and take a look. Gao Hanquan said in a deep voice. In his opinion, Yi Lifei was already a person who was about to die. Even if Yi Lifei desperately counterattacked before his death, he would not give Yi Lifei the chance to fight to the death. As long as he had the slightest chance to overturn the rumors that Yi Lifei had spread, he would take the opportunity to swallow up the entire Green Great Gang. By then, the Emerald Island would be the heaven-shaking faction's territory. When Gao Hanquan arrived at the Qinghong Gang, he was unimpeded. Not a single cultivator from the Qinghong Gang stood out to stop him. However, this scene made Gao Hanquan's heart sink. It seemed that the other party was prepared. As soon as Gao Hanquan walked through the door, he realized that all the leaders of the major forces on Emerald Island were here. His eyes flashed with surprise. Gang leader Yi, it seems that you already knew that I was coming, Gao Hanquan said calmly, but there was a hint of anger in his words. However, what made Gao Hanquan surprised was that Yi Lifei actually took the initiative to launch an attack. Chapter 30:13. Faction Leader Yi is right. Faction Leader Gao, I advise you to take your faction members and leave Emerald Island forever. Otherwise it will be troublesome to solve this matter. Liang Yonghui's eyes were sinister as he spoke slowly in a deep voice. Not only Yi Lifei and Liang Yonghui, but the other faction leaders also looked at Gao Hanquan and the other two with an unfriendly expression. Their attitude could not be more obvious. Gao Hanquan's cold gaze swept across everyone around him. He could not help but sneer and said, Faction leaders, I know that our Jintian faction's recent search for the murderer on Emerald Island has indeed harmed your interests. But it's not enough for you to pin such a big crime on our heads, right? If you're dissatisfied with me you can just say it. But it's impossible for me to admit to such a groundless crime. Gao Hanquan's voice was loud and filled with anger. He roared at everyone present and a murderous aura erupted from him. He was not afraid to make such a name for himself on Penglai Island. Even if everyone joined forces he would still not back down. Faction leader Gao, now that we know the truth, what's the point of you continuing to quibble like this? Yi Lifei sneered in his heart. Thinking of Gao Hanquan's arrogant appearance in front of him, he was overjoyed to see Gao Hanquan so angry at this moment. I'm quibbling? Gao Hanquan chuckled. Faction leader Yi, since you keep saying that our Jintian faction used underhanded means to recruit members, then show us the evidence. Otherwise, the consequences of slandering our Jintian faction will not be so simple. Lu Jinggang and Gui Jun stood behind Gao Hanquan, their faces solemn and serious. However, they were also filled with confidence. They did not believe that the other party could produce any evidence. However, Yi Lifei's words shocked them once again. Evidence? Yi Lifei looked at Gao Hanquan coldly. Faction leader Gao, do you really think we don't have it? Gao Hanquan's expression changed slightly and a trace of hesitation appeared in his heart. He had known Yi Lifei for a long time and knew his character very well. Yi Lifei's behavior was really strange. Show us the evidence you have. Yi Lifei snorted and waved his hand. Men, bring him here. In the next second, the cultivator from the Great Saiyan Gang led a few people into the hall. After seeing the cultivators who were brought up, Lu Jiangang couldn't help but be shocked. Aren't these the 7 missing cultivators of our heaven-shaking faction? I was wondering why they disappeared for no reason. So it was gang leader Yi who took them away. The anger in Lu Jiangang's eyes deepened. Gang leader Yi, your actions are a bit too much. I went overboard? Yi Lifei laughed heartily. Then he looked at the crowd and said, you can ask the leaders here, did I go overboard? Liang Yonghui snorted. If we didn't happen to discover these secrets from your gang members, I'm afraid we wouldn't know how long you'd keep them in the dark. What secret? Gao Hanchun frowned. At this moment he realized that something was wrong. Yi Lifei's performance was too confident. It didn't seem like he was forcing it, but he was full of confidence. Chapter 30:14. As soon as his voice fell, Yi Lifei reached out and threw a white porcelain bottle to Gao Hanchun. Master Gao, this is the medicinal pill we found from your gang members. Take a closer look. Do you find it familiar? Gao Hanchun took the white porcelain bottle and looked at the familiar white porcelain bottle and the 3 words, True Qi Pill, written on it. He understood that this was indeed the medicinal pill their gang often used. Gao Hanchun opened the bottle and looked at the medicinal pill inside. His eyes flashed with a touch of doubt. This medicinal pill was clearly not a true Qi pill. This bottle is indeed from our heaven-shaking faction, but this medicinal pill is not a true Qi pill. As for what it is, I don't know. Gao Hanchun said coldly. We have already asked an alchemist to identify it. This medicinal pill has the effect of controlling people's minds and making them addicted. Once a cultivator takes it, they can only be controlled. Yi Lifei said slowly, his eyes deep inside, Master Gao, I really didn't expect you to have such means. This medicinal pill is really an eye-opener for us. As Yi Lifei's voice fell, Gao Hanchun, Lu Jiangang and Gui Jun's faces suddenly changed. Master Yi, we have never seen this medicinal pill before. Could it be that someone is framing us? Gang leader Gao, you don't have to quibble anymore. Every gang sent people out to catch these cultivators. We caught 7 people in total. 5 of them had this kind of pill. You said you've never seen this kind of pill before. If you were in my shoes, would you believe it? Liang Yonghui's eyes were filled with a touch of ridicule. In his view, Gao Hanchun would not give up until the end. Even if there was irrefutable evidence now, he still wanted to quibble. This is definitely framing us. Lu Jiangang said angrily. Framing us? Yi Lifei sneered. You mean that so many of our gangs have joined together to frame your heaven-shaking faction? Second Master Lu, you think too highly of yourselves. If we wanted to join forces to frame you, why would we wait until today? In the past, our Emerald Island has always been very peaceful. But ever since your heaven-shaking faction came, you have been making a ruckus here. This old man never believes in groundless rumors. Ever since your heaven-shaking faction obtained this kind of pill, you should have been prepared to be exposed. Another faction leader said coldly. Gang leader Gao, your heaven-shaking association is not a force of our Emerald Island. We don't care what you do in your own territory, but if you want to come here and act like a tyrant, then you are wrong. I advise you to leave the Emerald Island immediately, or else you'll have to bear the consequences. The attitude of all the gang leaders present became tough. The Shocking Heavens faction had already broken the rules of the game by using such means. Now that all of them had joined forces, there was no need to be afraid of them. Gao Hanchun, Lu Jiangang and Gui Jun were completely dumbfounded. They knew very well that this was definitely a setup. Their heaven-shaking association was able to develop all the way until now because of their own attraction. The effect of this kind of medicinal pill was so shocking that even they had never heard of it before. However, after seeing the aggressive look of Yi Lifei and the others, they already knew that this was most likely true. Moreover, under the witness of so many gang leaders, this was simply irrefutable evidence. Chapter 30:15. Gao Hanchun never thought that the situation would be so serious. Looking at the smug look in Yi Lifei's eyes, he was almost certain that this was Yi Lifei's doing. On the entire Emerald Island, no one except Yi Lifei had the ability to do so. However, Yi Lifei's actions this time really terrified him. In order to frame him, Yi Lifei even brought out this kind of pill. Even he had only heard of the existence of this kind of pill, but he had never seen it before. The other party's plan this time made him unable to defend himself. Obviously they had planned everything and were just waiting for him to jump into the pit. With all these things connected, he had no room to refute at all. He was screwed. Gao Hanchun knew that this time he was really screwed. He even began to suspect that the two fellows who had been forced to eat the true chi pill in the square were bait that Yi Lifei had released. If that was really the case, then Yi Lifei's scheming truly made him fearful. Even if Gao Hanchun still insisted that this matter was not done by the Jintian faction, no one present would believe him. No one would choose to admit to such a big crime unless they were extremely stupid. However, facts spoke louder than words, and everyone already had an answer in their hearts. Faction leader Gao, if you continue to deny it, that's your business. However, on behalf of the various forces on the Emerald Island, I'll give you a deadline. If you don't leave the Emerald Island with your Jintian faction in one day, then don't blame us for using force. Yi Lifei's eyes gradually turned cold as he looked at Gao Hanchun. His hatred for Gao Hanchun was not as simple as this matter. Gao Hanchun had teamed up with his trusted subordinates to take his life, and even wanted to swallow the entire Great Saiyan faction. He would make Gao Hanchun pay for this. Are you forcing me? Gao Hanchun's face was as gloomy as water, and his deep voice was extremely hoarse. We've already made it very clear. How faction leader Gao decides is your own business. Yi Lifei waved his hand and said, Men, send the guest out. The words, send the guest out, directly slapped Gao Hanchun in the face. Gao Hanchun looked at everyone in front of him, but saw that they were all ignoring him. It was as if they had no intention of paying attention to him. He could not help but nod angrily. Fine. I'll leave. Gao Hanchun flicked his sleeves and left. The raging flames in his chest made him want to destroy the entire Green Great Gang. After watching Gao Hanchun leave, the faces of Yi Lifei and the others did not look good. This Gao Hanchun is really arrogant. Now that there is irrefutable evidence, he still dares to threaten us. He is really shameless. If he wasn't shameless, how could he do such a crazy thing? Liang Yonghui sneered, if the people from the heaven-shaking faction still don't leave tomorrow, we will attack together. The Emerald Island will never allow such an evil force to exist. Gao Hanchun had better leave the Emerald Island obediently. Otherwise we will have to fight, Yi Lifei said solemnly. Gang leader Yi, we have so many people. Do you think we're afraid of the heaven-shaking faction? If they don't leave tomorrow, we will make the heaven-shaking faction disappear from this world. Chapter 30:16. Gao Hanchun and the other two were on their way back from the Great Saiyan Gang. Almost all the voices they heard along the way were disdainful and abusive towards their heaven-shaking gang. This made their expressions turn uglier and uglier. Ever since their heaven-shaking gang's sphere of influence had grown larger and larger, no one dared to scold them on a daily basis. However, they were now being scolded by so many people. How could they not be angry? Yi Lifei, that old fox. He wants to use this opportunity to completely trample on our heaven-shaking gang. Gao Hanchun's gaze was gloomy and cold. He had never suffered such a big loss since establishing the heaven-shaking gang. Big brother, I think something is wrong. Gui Jun frowned. The usual joking expression on his face had disappeared and was replaced by a thick seriousness. We have been in contact with Yi Lifei for a long time. According to his previous performance, his plan shouldn't be so strict. Hearing Gui Jun's words, Gao Hanchun's expression changed a little. He said, What do you mean? He might have a military advisor behind him. Gui Jun said in a deep voice. Big brother, I also feel that we have fallen into a trap when we came to Emerald Island this time. The disappearance of those two cultivators is already very strange. After that, we simply fell into this trap step by step. Now we don't even have a chance to refute. Lu Jinggang said gloomily. Ever since they came to Emerald Island, he felt that many things had developed beyond their expectations. Logically speaking, it should be very easy to find two newcomers on this small Emerald Island. However, they had been here for so many days and they didn't even find a shadow of the other party. Gao Hanchun nodded. I also feel that Yi Lifei's performance this time is different from before. Not to mention the meticulous plan, the most important thing is that Yi Lifei can't get the pill with his ability. I'm afraid that he has recently found an expert. Big brother, do you think it could be those two cultivators who call themselves 100 Flowers Gate? Gao Hanchun looked at Gui Jun noncommittally. Gui Jun continued, those two fellows are still in the Great Saiyan Gang. With the temperament of the 100 Flowers Gate cultivators, they should have left long ago. Moreover, according to the news from the Great Saiyan Gang, Yi Lifei's condition didn't improve because of those two. However, Yi Lifei still treated them as guests. There must be a reason for that. Not only that, the two disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate came at a very opportune time, coinciding with this matter. Perhaps, it really is those two people. A fierce look flashed across Gao Hanchuan's eyes. When he saw those two fellows, he had a very feeling that something was wrong. But he didn't think too much about it. Now, after Gui Jun's reminder. So what if they did it? What should we do now? Lu Jinggang could not help but ask. To them it didn't matter who did it. What mattered the most was what they should do next. Chapter 30:17. Once we leave the Emerald Island, this title will be confirmed. Lu Jiangang's face was filled with unwillingness. The Shocking Heavens faction was at its peak right now, but they had to leave because of such a groundless title. Just in terms of momentum, they were already a level weaker than the Shocking Heavens faction. Now there's no other way but to leave temporarily. Once the major forces of the Emerald Island join forces to attack us, the consequences will be the most serious. Gui Jun patted Lu Jiangang's shoulder. Now they could only admit defeat and plan further in the future. The situation is not that bad. As long as Yi Lifei dies, we can make a comeback. For now, let's just endure it. Gao Hanchun said. After Bailey Hongzhuang heard the news from Yi Lifei, a faint smile appeared on her face. It seemed that the development of the situation was exactly as they had expected. I'm afraid the Xintian Association will completely withdraw from the Emerald Island now. Just thinking about Gao Hanchuan's expression today makes me happy. Shangguan Yingying's face was full of smiles, and her eyes were filled with joy. Because of the Xintian Association, they had been sullen for so long, and now they could finally hold their heads high. Just thinking about it made her happy. Gao Hanchun has suffered a lot of setbacks recently. First, 2 of his younger brothers died, and now he's being expelled by the people of the Emerald Island. It's really a double loss. Di Beichen said in a deep voice, and his beautiful lips curled into a charming arc. It's a pity that Gao Hanchun will probably leave the Emerald Island now. Otherwise, once the major forces join forces, the Xintian Association will definitely suffer a heavy blow. That would be the most satisfying situation. Xiren sighed faintly, and his expression was still filled with dissatisfaction. When had he, the dignified young sect master of the Cloud Sword sect, ever fallen into such a situation? Now, only the reputation of the Xintian Association was damaged, and that was a light punishment. Hearing Xiren's words, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, "We'll have to see Sect Master Ye's performance on this point." As soon as these words came out, when Xiren and Shangguan Yingying's faces both showed a strange color. They looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with interest and said, "Do you mean that this matter may still change? If it were you, would you let the person who almost took your life go so easily?" Xiren's expression changed slightly as he understood. "So, we have a good show to watch today?" Di Beichen smiled faintly. "This is the grudge between gang leader Yi and Gao Hanchun. We just need to wait here and watch the show." With their current strength, they obviously had no hope of fighting the heaven-shaking gang head-on. However, if they were to hand this problem over to the Green Great Gang, then it might not necessarily be the case. Getting someone else to do the dirty work was undoubtedly like this. They only needed to wait for the good news. For a moment, the atmosphere in the room became much more relaxed. The 4 people and 3 beasts were looking forward to Yi Lifei's methods. They believed that Yi Lifei would not disappoint them. The next day, another shocking news came from the Emerald Island. Just last night, the Green Great Gang was ambushed by an assassin. Fortunately, the Green Great Gang's cultivators reacted quickly and subdued the assassin. However, in the end, they found out that the assassin was actually a cultivator from the Heaven-Shaking Gang. Because the secret of their use of pills was discovered by the Green Great Gang, they were extremely dissatisfied and wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to silence them. Chapter 30:18. After the news of the Shocking Heavens faction using elixirs spread yesterday, everyone despised the Shocking Heavens faction to the extreme. Logically speaking, the Shocking Heavens faction should have quickly withdrawn from the Emerald Island. Who would have thought that they would dare to retaliate against the Great Cyan Gang? This was too despicable. Compared to the Shocking Heavens faction who used such despicable methods to control their members, the Great Cyan Gang who chased the Shocking Heavens faction out of the Emerald Island in order to protect everyone's interests had already become a hero in everyone's hearts. At least the Great Cyan Gang ensured that the Emerald Island would still be a pure land. Now that the Great Cyan Gang's leader was attacked like this, everyone naturally could not stand by and watch. For a moment, everyone's crusade against the Shocking Heavens faction became even more intense. After the Yunyang Gang and the other forces found out about this, they were unable to restrain their anger. The Shocking Heavens faction was arrogant before, but now that they had found out the truth, they actually used such methods. This was not only a provocation to the Great Cyan Gang, but a provocation to all of them. Suddenly, everyone could no longer sit still. They all went to the Great Cyan Gang and requested to join forces to teach the Shocking Heavens faction a lesson. Yi Lifei was also extremely angry about what happened last night. He thought that they had already done enough by letting the Shocking Heavens faction leave the Emerald Island. He never thought that the Shocking Heavens faction would go so far. He could no longer endure it. Gao Hanchun and the others were originally busy with the matters of leaving the Emerald Island. After hearing the news, they were also burning with anger. This damned old fox, he didn't plan on letting us leave in silence. Lu Jinggang said angrily. What assassin? They had no intention of assassinating Yi Lifei, okay? Gui Jun's expression was extremely ugly. Now that everyone believes in Yi Lifei, the truth is no longer important. Yi Lifei wants to use this opportunity to deal a heavy blow to us. Big brother, what should we do? Let all our brothers leave quickly. Gao Hanchun immediately made a decision. However, Yi Lifei had already planned all of this. How could he give Gao Hanchun and the others enough time? When the Shocking Heavens faction retreated, Yi Lifei's team had already arrived. This was an astonishing battle. Both sides were cultivators above the 5th level of the Purple Realm. The shockwaves of the battle caused the entire Emerald Island to tremble. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three stood on the high platform and looked at the battle in the distance with a faint smile on their faces. Leader Yi really did not disappoint us. Shengguan Yingying could not help but clap her hands as she was watching this scene. When Xiren grinned, revealing his white and neat teeth. Gao Hanchun has really suffered a double loss this time. Looking at the situation, this loss will definitely not be small. Yi Lifei's Great Cyan Sect. Was Cyan Sect's leader, Heaven's faction was faction. So he Heavens during this time, leader Cyan Sect faction had. You Heaven's Cyan Sect. So be it Heaven's Cyan he. Chapter 30:19. Without the threat of the Jintian faction, we don't need to cower in fear anymore. Bailey Hongzhuang turned around, no longer looking at the battle behind her. The outcome of this battle had been decided, the only uncertainty was how many losses the Jintian faction had suffered. However, with Yi Lifei's temperament, he would definitely deal a huge blow to the Jintian faction. That was enough. When Yi Lifei returned with his subordinates, many of them were injured, but their faces were filled with joy. Clearly, today's battle had made them feel extremely happy. I've been unhappy with the Jintian faction for a long time. Today, when I saw how flustered they were, I felt so good. Those outsiders took an inch and wanted a mile. Did they really think that we were afraid of them? Aren't they still beaten up by us like stray dogs? Brothers, you're all tired today. Have a good rest. I'll reward you all tomorrow. Yi Lifei stood in front of everyone and raised his hands, his voice was unusually heroic. As soon as these words came out, the cultivators present all burst into a burst of exclamations. Thick joy surged onto their faces. Long live the faction leader! Long live the faction leader! Long live the faction leader! The voices of the Great Cyan faction's members were loud and clear, filled with joy, spreading out with the Great Cyan faction as the center. From this day onwards, the Jintian faction's forces had completely disappeared from the Emerald Island. It would be impossible for them to set foot on the Emerald Island in the future. Yi Lifei's mood was extremely good. After changing into a clean set of clothes, he went to find Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. To him, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were his great benefactors. Faction leader Yi, congratulations. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three said with a smile. Yi Lifei's face was full of smiles, the curve of his lips almost reached his ears. You're too kind. It's all thanks to you. If it weren't for you, the Jintian faction would be the one celebrating right now. He knew very well that if it weren't for the appearance of the four people in front of him, he would be terminally ill now. How could he have the might of today's massacre? Gang leader Yi, you're too polite. We're just giving advice. The real executor is the Green Great Gang. Today, the Heaven Shaking Association has suffered heavy losses. According to my estimations, the Heaven Shaking Association's forces have shrunk by at least half. However, Gao Hanchun and the others were very fast, and had already escaped at the first moment. Yi Lifei's face revealed a bit of regret. If he could personally take Gao Hanchun's life today, that would be the most satisfying thing. For this result, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were not surprised. Gao Hanchun was the leader of the Jintian faction. No matter how big the loss was, he would definitely be fine. There will always be a chance in the future, Di Beichen said calmly. Gang leader Yi, to tell you the truth, we have something to ask you today. Or rather, we need your help, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Second young Master Di, feel free to speak your mind. There's no need to be so courteous between us. As long as it's something I can help with, it's definitely not a problem. Yi Lifei patted his chest and guaranteed. The second young Master Di in front of him was his benefactor. Just this life-saving grace alone was not something that could be easily repaid. Faction leader Yi, do you know anything about the Golden Flame Auction House? Chapter 30-20. However, the headquarters of the Golden Flame Auction House is on Penglai Island. Are you going to participate in the auction? Yi Lifei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. It's easy to participate in the branch auction, but the highest level auction of the Golden Flame Auction House requires an invitation to participate. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Gang leader Yi, I want to ask if you've seen the Violet Dragon Emperor Ginseng and the Tears of Frigid Flame when you participated in the auction? Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's question, Yi Lifei thought for a moment and shook his head. I've never seen these two herbs appear in an auction. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but look at each other, their brows slightly wrinkled. With Yi Lifei's identity in Penglai Island, the number of auctions he had participated in should not be small, but Yi Lifei had never seen these two herbs, which was a bit strange. You need these two herbs? Yi Lifei immediately understood. I'll send someone to the Golden Flame Auction House to inquire. If they have these two herbs, I'll buy them. Thank you, gang leader Yi. Compared to second young Master Di's life-saving grace, what is this small favor of mine? Yi Lifei laughed. At this time, Di Beichen also spoke. Gang leader Yi, as long as we get the relevant information or obtain these two herbs, we'll leave Emerald Island. Yi Lifei was startled. You've just arrived at Penglai Island, why don't you stay in our Great Sighing Gang for a while? It won't be too late to leave after you've made your next move. Di Beichen waved his hand. We plan to go to Demon Refining Island to gain experience. If we weren't delayed by the Heaven-Shaking Gang, we would have already left for Demon Refining Island. I see. Yi Lifei suddenly understood. Demon Refining Island is indeed a good place to improve your cultivation, but it's also very dangerous. You must be careful if you go there. Xiren smiled. We came to Penglai Island this time because of the Demon Refining Abyss reputation. We've long wanted to see how powerful the Demon Refining Abyss is. We've already mentally prepared ourselves. Thank you, gang leader Yi, for reminding us. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had made their decision a long time ago, Yi Lifei nodded and said no more. I'll send someone to the auction house to inquire about these two herbs. I'll inform you as soon as I have any news. Thank you. After sending Yi Lifei away, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others sat together. Master, why are we in such a hurry to leave? Xiao Hei sat on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder, her round and large black eyes kept turning. They had finally gotten rid of the threat on Emerald Island, so there was no need to be in such a hurry to leave. Di Beichen glanced at Xiao Hei. Previously, we were on the same side as Yi Lifei to deal with the Heaven-Shaking Gang. Naturally, there was no problem. But now that the Heaven-Shaking Gang's threat has been eliminated, if we continue to stay here, Yi Lifei might be afraid. Leaving early can maintain this friendship. Who knows, it might be useful in the future. Chapter 30-21. When Xiren had a look of understanding on his face. Based on their previous experience, they were very familiar with how to deal with such a situation. In the face of similar interests, everyone would usually work together. However, once it was time to split the benefits, they would turn against each other. They did not have any thoughts or demands for Emerald Island. Why should they let Yi Lifei develop a grudge against them because of this? We've only been on Penglai Island for a short period of time. With our current cultivation, we won't be able to gain a foothold here. Why don't we preserve this friendship so that we can use it to solve some problems in the future? Bailey Hongzhuang patted Xiao Hei's head. This little girl was better at fighting, but she did not know much about people's hearts. After all, the world of monsters was not as complicated as that of humans. Xiao Hei spread her hands and said, the world of humans is really troublesome. I don't understand. I only hope that sect leader Yi can help us find those two medicinal herbs. Then we won't have to worry anymore. Shengguan Yingying put her hands together and her eyes were filled with a praying look. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other and had the same expression on their faces. If everything could go so smoothly, it would be great. Yi Fei was very fast. He immediately sent someone to the Golden Flame auction house to inquire. However, the result was no. Second, young Master D, I've sent someone to the Golden Flame auction house to inquire. They don't have these two medicinal herbs. Moreover, when they heard that I was looking for these two medicinal herbs, their expression seemed a little strange. They even asked me what I could use them for. However, I didn't say anything. Yi Fei immediately told Bailey Hongzhuang and the others about the results. Hearing this news, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but frown. Sure enough, the situation was not as smooth as they had expected. I still have a few acquaintances in the Golden Flame auction house, so I got some insider information from them. The Golden Flame auction house has indeed received these two medicinal herbs before, but they have never auctioned them. They were directly taken away by the higher-ups. I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to obtain these two medicinal herbs. A helpless expression appeared on Yi Fei's face. If possible, he really wanted to help find these two medicinal herbs. Unfortunately, from the information revealed by the other party, the person above was probably not simple. As soon as he said that, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's hearts skipped a beat. If that's the case, the Golden Flame auction house is not collecting these two herbs for auction, but for someone else. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. According to Bailey Hongzhuang's judgment, although there were many ways to use these two herbs, the possibility of using them together was very small. Could it be that the other party also had the cursed body? However, Bailey Hongzhuang found it unbelievable when she thought about it. The occurrence of the cursed physique was a rare occurrence, and the other party had collected more than one set of herbs. What was the purpose of collecting so many sets? This was a little strange. I'm afraid that the other party's identity is not simple. Even when I went to ask, they did not say who the other party was. I'm guessing that the other party's identity is much higher than mine. Yi Fei glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He did not continue speaking, but he believed that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others understood what he meant. Chapter 30-22. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three also had their own thoughts. This situation was undoubtedly the most complicated. If the other party was already in existence like the three major forces, it would be even more difficult for them to obtain those two medicinal herbs. This was no longer a problem that could be solved with money. First of all, they needed to reach the qualifications to talk to those forces. Otherwise, all their efforts would be in vain. However, the three major forces had existed on Penglai Island for so many years, and they were just a few newcomers to Penglai Island. How easy would it be to negotiate with them? For a moment, everyone's mood was a little low. They had always been optimistic, but they were not blindly optimistic. This news had already told them how difficult the road ahead would be. Leader Yi, thank you very much. Di Beichen was the first to recover from his emotions, and a smile appeared on his face again. Yi Fei also felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' mood was not normal. At this moment, after hearing Di Beichen's words, he also waved his hand, and a look of guilt appeared on his face. Young Master Di, I'm really sorry that I couldn't help you with this matter. Di Beichen smiled faintly. Leader Yi has already helped us a lot by helping us inquire about this kind of information. At least he has pointed out the direction for our next path. After Yi Fei left, the room fell into silence. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were silent, each with their own thoughts. This news was simply a bolt from the blue for them. They originally thought that as long as the auction house had it, they would only need to pay a certain price. But now that the auction house had collected it for someone else, how difficult would it be for them to get it? If they wanted to talk to those major forces, they would at least have to prove that they were valuable enough or display enough strength. But now they had nothing at all. Di Beichen saw that everyone's mood was so low, and his incomparably handsome face once again burst into a sunny smile. You don't have to be so sad. Although the chances have become a lot smaller now, it is not completely impossible. We have not witnessed miracles along the way. Maybe just like the Zhentian faction, there will be a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. When Ziran took a deep look at Di Beichen, he quickly hid the worry in his eyes and put on his usual heartless smile. You're right. We brothers have seen everything since we were young. This is just a test given to us by the heavens. Shangguan Yingying's hands were intertwined, and the complex look on her face remained unchanged. She wasn't as good at hiding her emotions as Ziran. She was really worried about Di Beichen. Could they really reach such a realm in a year or two? If she failed, the consequences would be unimaginable. Among everyone, Bailey Hongzhuang's mood was undoubtedly the heaviest. She never thought that Di Baichen would leave her one day, but all the things that happened now made her feel helpless. All these things were beyond their control and no one knew the final result. The only thing she knew was that she absolutely couldn't accept Di Baichen's departure. Although her heart was extremely sad, Bailey Hongzhuang still forced a smile. We'll definitely find a way. Chapter 30-23. Di Baichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. His eyes were filled with heartache. He knew too well how strong and fragile Bailey Hongzhuang was. No matter how strong she appeared in front of him, he could still see through her weakness and fear. However, he could not mention this, nor was he willing to expose Bailey Hongzhuang's pretense. He did not want to see Bailey Hongzhuang cry. It would make him deeply feel that he was useless. In the past, he secretly swore that he would not let anyone hurt Bailey Hongzhuang. However, the person who truly made Bailey Hongzhuang afraid and sad was himself. Di Baichen gradually clenched his hands under his sleeves. Because he used too much force, his knuckles had turned white. However, Di Baichen did not feel it at all. His life was not up to the heavens. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, he would not give up. He definitely could not let Bailey Hongzhuang suffer such a cruel consequence. After that, Yi Lifei helped Bailey Hongzhuang and the others ask about the two kinds of medicinal herbs. However, none of his friends possessed these two kinds of medicinal herbs. These two kinds of medicinal herbs were not a lot of medicinal herbs. In addition, Penglai Island had a lot of cultivators. The proportion of alchemists was much lower than the outside world. Therefore, the amount of medicinal herbs needed was not to mention. In response, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others expressed their gratitude to Yi Lifei and prepared to leave Emerald Island. They had already obtained all the information they needed. Continuing to stay here would only be a waste of time. The thing they could not afford to waste the most now was time. When Yi Lifei saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were preparing to leave, he once again urged them to stay. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others politely declined. Young Master Di, you must be careful when you go to Demon Refining Island. I hope we will have a chance to meet again in the future, Yi Lifei said slowly. Demon Refining Island was extremely dangerous. The number of cultivators who died every day was not small. Yi Lifei had been to Demon Refining Island before. Therefore, he was very familiar with the situation there. If cultivators were not careful, they would lose their lives there. He had advised Bailey Hongzhuang and the others that with their abilities, they would be able to live well on other islands of Penglai Island. However, if they went to a place like Demon Refining Island, their survival would be uncertain. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had already made up their minds. They had to go to Demon Refining Island to improve themselves. Demon Refining Island was the fastest place to improve their cultivation. They knew that, and they knew of it now. They knew that there was no use to them now. They could only improve themselves. Gang leader Yi will meet again. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others sat on the small boat again and left the first island they landed on. I heard that Demon Refining Island's yuan qi is much denser than other islands. Therefore, almost all the cultivation maniacs in Penglai Island are gathered there. Ziren looked at everyone with interest. He felt that Demon Refining Island was much more powerful than Bloodground Abyss. Cultivation maniacs? Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips curled up slightly. She then smiled and nodded. This description is very appropriate. Therefore, the cultivators there are much more powerful than the cultivators on other islands. I'm afraid this is why Yi Lifei repeatedly reminded us to be careful. Chapter 30-24. We have to hurry up and reach the 5th level of the Purple Realm. Our current cultivation is too dangerous. I'm really curious how my old man managed to survive when he came here alone with that kind of cultivation. Ziren held his chin with his right hand, and his eyes were full of thoughts. Although he was speechless about his old man's usual behavior, he had to admit that his old man was really capable. Sect Master Wen is a genius cultivator. My master always admires him when he talks about him. His past must be a legend, but he rarely talks about it. Di Baichen's face showed an interested expression. There were very few people that his master admired, and Sect Master Wen was one of them. Shengguan Yingying also nodded. I also think that my father is amazing. You should learn from him. With our current situation, it will take several months or even a year to reach the 5th level of the Purple Realm. I hope that the demonic abyss lives up to its name and can speed up our cultivation progress. Otherwise, a complicated light flickered in his bright black phoenix eyes. If it were any other cultivator, they would definitely think that this kind of cultivation speed was already very fast. After reaching the Purple Realm, it was extremely difficult to advance even one level in a year. Being able to advance 2 levels in a year was a speed that would make people envious. However, this speed was far from enough for Bailey Hongzhuang. They had to shorten the time. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Shangguan Yingying nodded. I believe that the demonic abyss won't let us down. Since there are so many cultivation maniacs there must be a reason. Maybe our cultivation speed will greatly increase. That would be wonderful. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 took a boat to the Demonic Abyss Island. There were 2 islands between the Demonic Abyss Island and the Emerald Island. Although it wasn't very far, it still took a few days to reach. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 weren't as bored as before. Instead, they encountered many boats. There were big and small boats, plain, exquisite, luxurious, and so on. It was clear that the most important means of transportation on the Penglai Island was boats. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 had been keeping a low profile and had not had any conflicts with any other teams. Therefore, they had been safe and sound along the way. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 finally arrived at Devil Refinement Island. From afar, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were attracted by the bright red world. The sky was bright red, the island was bright red, and even the seawater seemed to be bright red. Even though there was still a certain distance between them, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could still sense the thick murderous aura and the stench of blood. Such a murderous aura could only be formed by an extremely brutal killing. However, the demonic refining abyss was a place filled with slaughter. Only such an existence could cause the entire sky to be covered in blood. Looking at this blood-red world, I feel that it's very similar to the Bloodland Abyss. If we weren't on an island, the resemblance would be even greater. Xiren smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes also revealed a trace of a smile. Smelling this stench of blood, it really is somewhat familiar. Chapter 30-25. Back then, that brat Baichen obtained the inheritance of the blood refining tower, but I didn't. My old man talked about it for a long time and almost gave me the title of trash. I wonder if I can wash away my shame in the demon refining abyss this time? When Xiren's eyes suddenly lit up, if I can obtain the inheritance of the demonic refining abyss, my family's old man won't be able to nag at me like before. At the very least, I'll have more confidence in front of him. D. Baichen glanced at Xiren indifferently. Look at you, this matter has already happened so many years ago, and you still remember it. I don't want to remember this matter, but my old man talks about it in front of me every day. I have no choice. Xiren held his forehead. Normally it was fine, but as long as he was serious with the old man would bring up this matter, leaving him with no way to refute. It really made him helpless to the extreme. Based on his understanding of his old man, if he could obtain the inheritance of the demon refining abyss this time, he would be able to completely shut the old man's mouth. Xiren, then you have to work harder this time. Bailey Hongzhuang said with a smile. Xiren nodded. I've always been very confident in myself. Baichen, you have to be careful this time, don't lose to me. I'm more worried about history repeating itself. After the ship docked, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 set foot on the demon refining island. At a glance, the entire island was blood red, and even the sand was blood red. The fiery red world was strangely enchanting. Stepping on the ground, it felt very soft, as if the blood had fused with the sand for who knows how many years. The air was filled with a faint smell of blood. If it was someone who came here for the first time, they would definitely be very uncomfortable, just like Shangguan Yingying, who had been frowning ever since she set foot on the demon refining island. Although she was not unfamiliar with the smell of blood, she definitely did not like it. The entire island was shrouded in this smell, and it was very difficult for people to get used to it. Compared to Shangguan Yingying, Bailey Hongzhuang, D. Baichen, and Xiren were extremely indifferent. They had long been used to this environment. The demon refining island was not small, but the entire island could be said to be barren, without any plants. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could see the entire island at a glance. It was really a strange place. The entire island was barren, and only one building attracted the attention of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. In fact, this was the only building on the entire demonic refining island, so it was particularly shocking. Looking from afar, Bailey Hongzhuang found that the height of this pagoda was far beyond her expectations. It was dozens of stories high and could be said to be the tallest building she had ever seen. Wow, this demon refining tower looks quite shocking. Shangguan Yingying stared at the pagoda in shock. She had heard of the rumors of the blood-ground abyss, but the Bloodground Tower only had 9 floors. This pagoda was dozens of floors high. Just the feeling of vicissitudes of life was enough to shock her. If we want to obtain the inheritance of the demon refining abyss, don't tell me we have to go through so many levels? Xiren was secretly speechless. If that was really the case, then the demon refining abyss was truly terrifying. Chapter 30-26. If we really have to go through so many levels, then the cultivators who pass are really geniuses among geniuses. Xiao Hei looked at the shocking building in front of her and was secretly speechless. Could it be that no one has ever obtained the inheritance of the demonic abyss? As soon as she said this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Di Beichen and Xiren. She really didn't know anything about history. Di Beichen shook his head. That's not the case. There are still cultivators who have obtained the inheritance, but the number is even fewer than in the Bloodground abyss. Even if there should only be 1 or 2 people, right? Xiao Bai said helplessly. More or less. Di Beichen replied. Xiao Bai scratched her head, her face full of helplessness. It seems that the test of the demonic abyss is really a little abnormal. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly, not showing the slightest disappointment because of this news. We have already seen the effect of the blood aura field. It is very helpful to cultivators. The inheritance of the murderous aura field must be more powerful than the blood aura field, so it is naturally very difficult to obtain. If it was so easy to obtain, it wouldn't be so attractive. Ever since she came into contact with the blood aura field, Bailey Hongzhuang admired the power of the blood aura field. If she could obtain the murderous aura field, then once the 2 auras were combined, the effect would be even more shocking. For ordinary people, it was undoubtedly extremely difficult to fight above their level, but once they had the blood aura field or the murderous aura field, everything became much simpler. Shengguan Yingying nodded. Hongzhuang is right. It is precisely because the possibility of success is very small that once we succeed, the harvest will be extremely shocking. Since someone has already obtained the murderous aura field, we might be able to succeed. Looking at Shengguan Yingying's confident appearance, the smile in Wen Xiren's eyes couldn't help but deepen a little. He reached out and pulled the former into his arms. Yingying, you have to be mentally prepared before you go in. The scene inside is probably more cruel and bloody than you can imagine. Shengguan Yingying raised her eyebrows. Don't underestimate me. I wanted to go with you when you went to the Bloodground abyss, but I didn't have the chance. Beichen brought Hongzhuang to the Bloodfield abyss, but you refused to bring me. This time I'll show you how powerful I am. Hee hee. Xiren chuckled and tightened his grip on Shengguan Yingying's hand. Then I'll wait and see. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other and smiled. They turned and walked towards the demon refining pagoda in the center of the demon refining island. This solitary pagoda really gave everyone a lot of shock. It was only when Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 arrived in front of the pagoda that they could feel it more clearly. The pagoda was several hundred meters tall. Every single floor was much taller than an ordinary building. Moreover, there were many chains that were thicker than a human hand coiled around the pagoda. It seemed like a forbidden place, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. Looking at the pagoda before them, everyone felt as if they would be completely subdued as soon as they walked in. It was a deal with the devil, and the slightest carelessness would cause them to be completely wiped out. Chapter 30-27. Let's go in, Di Beichen said. In the next second, Di Beichen and the other 3 walked into the demon training tower together. As soon as they entered the demon training tower, the 4 of them felt an overwhelming clamor that went straight into their ears. It was a stark contrast to the silence outside. In their line of sight was a reception hall. The entire hall was abnormally spacious and bright. It was divided into various small sections, and every section was filled with people. It looked extremely busy. The appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 naturally attracted the attention of many people. However, everyone's gazes turned away after sizing them up for an instant. It was as if they were already used to it. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were secretly shocked when they saw this scene. This situation was completely different from the blood training tower. Most importantly, the bright lights here and everything in an orderly manner did not seem to be chaotic at all. It was completely different from what they had imagined. Instead, it made them feel as if they did not know where to start. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking about what to do, a graceful figure appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. The 4 of you should be new to the demon training tower, right? Di Beichen nodded slightly and said in a deep voice, that's right. The 4 of you, Please follow me to fill in your information. I will tell you the basic information and lifestyle of the demon training tower. The woman's face always had an indifferent and delicate smile, making it impossible for people to have any ill feelings towards her. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three followed behind the woman and walked to one of the many counters in the hall. There was a sign hanging there, Newcomer Registration Area. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were busy sizing up their surroundings and did not notice the existence of such a counter. The situation here seems to be a little different from what we imagined. I'm really curious as to how we can cultivate here. Xiren lowered his voice and said slowly. Di Beichen's eyes flashed with a deep light. You'll know later. Everything here is indeed different from the blood-ground abyss. Bailey Hongzhuang can't help but think of the first time she and Di Beichen received the spirit stones. It seems that Penglai Island likes this layout very much. Although the place where they received the spirit stones is not as magnificent as here, the overall layout is still the same. It was precisely this kind of orderly and abnormal feeling that made them realize that all of this was not simple, causing them to not dare to act rashly. Just by looking at the scene before her, Bailey Hongzhuang was certain that everyone here had to abide by certain rules. Once the rules were broken, the consequences would be very tragic. The woman walked into the counter, her delicate face always filled with a polite smile. She reached out and handed the pen and paper to Di Beichen, saying, Please fill in your information first. Di Beichen looked at the paper in front of him and couldn't help but frown, because there was only one place to fill in, and that was cultivation. In the name column there was only a number. As if seeing Di Beichen's confusion, the woman explained, In our demon training island, we don't call people by their names, only their serial number. This serial number is your name here. As soon as these words came out, Di Beichen and the others understood, and the surprise in their hearts became even stronger. Chapter 30-28. Our demonic training tower is divided into a total of 5 areas. One is the living area, which is where the cultivators usually live. Everyone has their own room, but they need to pay a certain fee. The size of the room is different, and the price is also determined according to the size of the room. No matter what kind of service you need, whether it's ordering food, buying pills, weapons, or other needs, you only need to go to the counter in the center of the central area and say it. As long as you can afford it, the service you need will be sent to your room as soon as possible. When talking about other needs, the woman looked at Di Beichen and the others with a hint of frivolity. The meaning of her words couldn't be more obvious. This is the price list of the accommodation. You can take a look. Di Beichen took the price list and looked at it. Although he was prepared, he still couldn't help but be surprised. This price was really shocking. Previously, when they were on Emerald Island, the rooms they stayed in were of the highest quality. 1 low-grade spirit stone per day was already a high price. However, in the Demon Refining Tower, even the worst room cost 3 spirit stones per day. As for the price of a large room, it was even more expensive. This was just the cost of the room. Food and some other basic needs were not included. If all of these were added together, the cost of a day's accommodation could be said to be extremely shocking. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others naturally saw this price and their hearts couldn't help but thump. Ever since they came to Penglai Island, they had become completely poor. Fortunately, before they left, Yi Lifei gave them some spirit stones. They didn't refuse because they felt that their needs after coming to the Demon Training Tower might not be small. But now, looking at the price list, the help Yi Lifei gave them was just a drop in the bucket. They definitely wouldn't stay on Demon Training Island for a short time. According to the consumption of so many spirit stones a day, it wouldn't be long before they used up all their savings. If they couldn't find a way to make money on Demon Training Island, then they would be forced to leave in 2 or 3 months. A strong sense of helplessness rose in the hearts of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. If it was in the past, they had not experienced this kind of embarrassment for a long time. They did not expect that after coming to Penglai Island, they could not move an inch because of this problem. The woman's face was filled with a faint smile. Looking at the expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, she said, "Have you all decided on which room to stay in? Give us 2 of the most common rooms," Di Beichen said. Based on their current situation, this was the only thing they could do. The more spiritual stones they saved, the longer they could stay on the island. Hearing Di Beichen's answer, the woman nodded, but a look of disdain flashed in the depths of her eyes. All right. Other than the residential area, the second area is where the arena matches are held. Everyone can head to the second area to participate in the arena. If you win, you will receive a certain reward. If you lose, you might lose your life. Similarly, you can also choose to place a bet. If you win, you will receive a corresponding reward, the woman continued. Chapter 30-29. The third area is the living quarters for alchemists and doctors. It's relatively quiet there and no one would dare to disturb them. Alchemists and doctors can refine pills or concoct medicines and sell them in exchange for a certain amount of spirit stones. However, we will take a commission from them. Aside from alchemists and doctors, ordinary cultivators are not allowed to enter the third area. This is the method we use to protect ourselves. The woman did not explain in detail when she spoke about this. Clearly, she did not think that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were either of the two. Alchemists and doctors did not need to worry about money. How could they be as embarrassed as the four in front of them? May I ask if we can sell pills and the like in the other areas? Bailey Hongzhuang slowly asked. Based on their current situation, their need for spirit stones was not small. If they ran out of spirit stones in the future, they could only use this method to exchange for them. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the woman could not help but glance at Bailey Hongzhuang. The disdain in her eyes grew even stronger, but she still nodded. Yes, as long as there's something valuable, the Devil Refining Tower can sell it on your behalf. Thank you. Bailey Hongzhuang heaved a sigh of relief. At least this way they would have a way to deal with it. They would not have to worry about being forced to leave due to a lack of spirit stones. The fourth area is the cultivation area. Different rooms in the cultivation area have different levels of yuan qi. If you want to quickly raise your cultivation level, cultivating in the cultivation area is a very good method. However, the price of the cultivation area is extremely high. It's much higher than the living quarters. Furthermore, it's not something that can be entered with money alone. You must reach a certain level in the Devil Refining Tower before you can enter. When the woman spoke up to this point, she glanced indifferently at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. She had no intention of introducing them further. These fellows can't even afford to stay in the most ordinary of rooms. If they want to cultivate in the cultivation area, that's a complete fantasy. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others naturally noticed the change in the woman's mood. Hence, even though they were very interested in the cultivation area, they did not ask any further. They thought that it would only make the other party laugh even more. Since that was the case, it was better to let them find out for themselves. In any case, according to the woman's words, they did not have the qualifications to head to the cultivation area for the time being. The fifth area is the trial area. Whether or not you can obtain the inheritance of the Demon Refining Tower depends on this trial area. If you can pass through all the trials, you will be able to obtain the inheritance of the Killing Aura. However, this is not an easy task. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others nodded. After the woman's introduction, they now had a basic understanding of the Magic Tower. Compared to the simple division of the Blood Refining Tower, the division of the Demon Refining Tower was clearly much more detailed and had more functions than the Blood Refining Tower. If you don't have any other questions, write down your cultivation here. You may leave after receiving your number plate. Hearing this, Di Beichen and the other three wrote down their cultivation levels on the paper one by one. However, this was not their real cultivation levels. Chapter 30-30. Thank you for the reminder. Di Beichen cupped his fists and walked up to the second floor with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. With the departure of Di Beichen and the others, another woman came to the side of the first woman, her face full of interest. Tianmeng, I saw that the men just now were not bad. Do they have any potential for development? Sweet Dream curled her lips. So what if they're good looking? They're just a few poor bastards living on the second floor. It's a complete waste of time to deal with them. They can only live on the second floor? The other woman seemed to be very surprised. They don't look like it. Take a look at their cultivation. Sweet Dream handed the registration book in front of her to the woman. They're all at the 5th level of the Purple Realm. They must be newcomers to Penglai Island and came here stupidly out of curiosity. They don't understand the power of this place at all. In my opinion, it won't be long before they lose their lives here. Sweet Dream shrugged. She had seen many such cultivators before, and they were usually cannon fodder. They might not even be able to cause a single ripple on this demonic refining island before they were directly thrown out to wet the ground. Looking at the registration in front of her, the woman also showed a lack of interest. There's really nothing to pay attention to. It's more reliable to find a man with a lot of money. Unfortunately, the men with a lot of money don't look very good. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walked to the second floor, Xiaohei couldn't help but say, That woman clearly looked down on us. At first it was fine, but when she found out that we were going to live in the most ordinary room, her attitude immediately changed. She's really a snob. Shengguan Yingying's face also showed an angry expression. Yes, the contempt in her eyes was too obvious. I've never been looked down on like this before. Xiren patted Shengguan Yingying's shoulder and smiled. Yingying, the people here are all snobs. If you didn't show your ability, it's normal for people to look down on you like this. It's good enough that she didn't directly mock us. In fact, we are indeed 4 poor fellows. Even if we add up all the spirit stones we have, we don't know how long we can stay in this residential area. Bailey Hongzhuang spread out her hands with a self-deprecating smile on her face. Now that she was dressed as a man, she didn't feel much. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Shengguan Yingying couldn't help but laugh. Hongzhuang, you're really calm. Just get used to it. Bailey Hongzhuang came to an understanding in her heart. Shengguan Yingying had always grown up in the Clouds Word sect since she was young, and the number of times she'd left the sect to gain experience in tempering wasn't many. Thus, she didn't encounter many situations like this. But she was different. She'd walked through the ridicule and disdain of others all along the way, and she'd long since become accustomed to such gazes. This kind of person was also very simple. As long as you displayed a certain amount of strength, she would immediately change her original face and let you feel how fast she changed her face. There should be a lot of rich people in this devil refining tower. There aren't many people living on the 2nd floor. Looks like we're indeed at the bottom. Di Beichen sized up the situation around him and judged. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the situation around her. She also noticed that some of the doors were open, which meant that there were no cultivators living inside. Chapter 30-31. Don't worry, I believe that we won't be staying here for long. Di Beichen's deep and charming eyes rippled with the light of a smile. He was very confident about this point. As soon as he said this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 looked at each other and smiled. As long as they had the ability, they would be able to quickly improve the situation before them. Xiren, I feel that the situation of this magic tower is different from what you told me before. Everything seems to be quite normal. Shengguan Yingying raised her eyebrows and looked at Xiren. She had always been looking forward to seeing the cruel side of the magic tower with her own eyes because Xiren had introduced a lot of things to her in order to let her be mentally prepared. However, after coming here, she felt that the situation was completely different. The situation here is also beyond my expectations. However, when we go to the arena area, you should be able to see it. Xiren said with a faint smile. Shengguan Yingying declined to comment. Let's stay here for the time being. The density of the elemental energy in the demonic training tower is indeed higher than outside. The density of the elemental energy here is already comparable to when we were cultivating in the sect. I am really curious as to how dense the elemental energy in the cultivation area is. Judging from the pride of that woman when she introduced the cultivation area, the density of the yuan qi in the cultivation area must be very high. If we can cultivate there, it will be a great help to our cultivation. Unfortunately, with our current situation, whether it is the spirit stones or the level, we don't have enough. We have to think of a way to reach a high enough level and then earn enough spirit stones. As for the other things, we are not in such a hurry. The ink-black phoenix eyes rippled with a deep light. To Bailey Hongzhuang, the most important thing now was to increase her cultivation. Nothing else was that important. Tomorrow we will go to the arena area to take a look and understand the situation at the same time. Let's have a good rest here today. Di Beichen said. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. That woman gave me a manual just now. It is about life in the magic tower. Let's take a look at it later. While they were talking, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 successfully found their room. The 2 rooms were right next to each other, which was very convenient. Beichen Hongzhuang, have a good rest. We'll make our move tomorrow after we're refreshed, Wen Xiren said. After drifting on the ship for a few days, everyone was a little tired. They just wanted to have a good rest today. Rest well too. Closing the door, Bailey Hongzhuang also looked at the room in front of her. The room was very simple. There was only a bed inside and nothing else. However, the size of the room was much larger than Bailey Hongzhuang had imagined. It seemed that the standard of living in the demon refining tower was quite good. Even the worst room looked very good. Of course, 3 spirit stones a day was enough for one to live in a luxurious residence in the outside world. Bailey Hongzhuang sat down on the bed and flipped through the manual in her hand. Baichen, the difference between the demon refining abyss and the blood ground abyss seems to be that they have all the inns in the blood ground abyss in the demon refining tower. That's why the tower is so tall. Chapter 30-32. Although the blood refining tower only had a total of 9 floors, the entire blood ground abyss was extremely large. Including the training grounds, the demon refining tower only had a few dozen floors. The difference in size between the two could be imagined. This is not surprising. The requirements to go to the blood ground abyss are much lower. Just the threshold of cultivators above the 5th level of the Purple Realm is enough to stop many people from coming to Penglai Island. Therefore, the range of the demon refining tower is destined to be smaller than the blood refining tower. However, the people here are much stronger. Baichen nodded. The higher the level of the pyramid, the fewer the number of cultivators. Therefore, the range of the demon refining tower was naturally smaller. Looking at the introduction in the manual, I feel that the demon refining abyss is even more brutal than the blood ground abyss. With our current cultivation, I'm afraid it's very dangerous here. Bailey Hongzhuang handed the manual to Baichen. The content of the manual was very simple. The principle was that strength was everything. As for the rest, it was useless here. The strength of a 5th level of the Purple Realm was often the same as cannon fodder here, let alone a 3rd level of the Purple Realm. Baichen looked at the contents of the manual and his eyes deepened. You're right. With our current cultivation, it's not suitable for us to fight with anyone. Otherwise, it'll be very troublesome. Just the fact that they were able to come here without even reaching the 5th level of the Purple Realm was enough to attract a lot of attention. According to his experience, it was never a good thing to attract attention in a place like this. It was a big trouble. In that case, won't we be in a lot of trouble? The 3 beasties stood to the side, their faces revealing a difficult expression. Bailey Hongzhuang stroked Baisher's soft fur. We've already mentally prepared ourselves for this. With our cultivation, it's difficult to move around here. However, as long as we're careful not to cause trouble, it's not a problem to cultivate here quietly. At least, the density of the elemental energy here is higher than on other islands. Let's go to the arena area tomorrow to take a look. It would be best if we could make use of the arena area to earn a certain amount of spirit stones. This way we can also solve our urgent problem. Baichen reached out to hold Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "Wife, you must be tired these days. Rest well. It won't be too late to think about other things in the future." Baichen's eyes, which were as deep as the sea, flickered with intense heartache. He could see all the hardships that Bailey Hongzhuang was suffering right now, and his heart ached even more. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. All right, let's rest together. She always believed that tomorrow would be better. No matter what kind of desperate situation she was in, she firmly believed that there was always a way out. The next day, after Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 rested for a while, they were also full of energy. All of their fatigue had disappeared without a trace. After understanding the price list of the magic training tower, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 no longer had any thoughts of ordering food. Fortunately, they still had a lot of dry rations in their Chenkuan bags. Before they earned enough spirit stones, they didn't plan on eating here for the time being. On the bottom 10 floors of the magic training tower, other than the reception hall on the 1st floor, the 2nd to 10th floors were all residential areas. The 10th to 15th floors were where the alchemists and doctors lived. The 16th floor was where the arena was. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.